Yeah, I mean, this is the style I make. A lot of guys don't like having the nose hook because the idea is when you blast a fish, you want that sucker to be removed off the harness completely. So like sometimes this will keep, will stay in its face instead of just ripping out. You should be setting it hard enough to where this rips its face completely off. But sometimes it doesn't always happen. But I get a lot of my fish on the circle hook, and rubber bands and like nose clips will not hook fish. Go figure, right? All right. One in the beak, and then when I'm rigging, I like to scrape a couple scales off, and you want to stay in the top half of the sucker so you're not puncturing guts, because then they just don't last very long. Like to go in and then back out because it just stays locked better than just poking it in there. There's one. Like we could run 9, but it gets too crazy and lines get crossed, and then next thing you know, you got a giant hook in your knee under your kneecap. That's what happened 2 years ago.
And how far are you dropping that down?
To the bottom. They're just resting on the bottom, swimming. Yeah, it's kind of like a river walleye rig or kind of catfish rig. I'll use egg sinkers, but I also use these Lindy nose snags, and these actually cast better, whereas this, when you cast, it stays put. Like the sinker just stays and the sucker goes. So then you gotta like feed it to try to get it to go down, where that one just sails with the whole rig. And I just feed the line down, because if you just hold the thumb down, it'll pendulum closer to the boat. I want it to be as far out as possible. We're right on a break. So like there's a drop off like right here, and it drops into like 20 some feet of water, and then it slowly flats up to a good weed edge there in like 12, 13 feet of water.
You want to keep these lines
tight as possible, because either they're gonna rip it out, and usually these ones, they'll grab the sucker and they'll go straight for deep water. It's like when you feed a dog, they go right under the dinner table. Well, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
These ones might come this way. So, I mean, these ones can too. So you got to keep an eye on which ones are tight, line direction. Because if that one that's always been that way is over there, we're going to have some issues. We don't want to get in the anchor rope.
Okay, question from the back of the room. Those weights are, I mean, they're not light, but those are, those are pretty big fish for live bait. Like, how much leeway do they have with the weights they can move? Does it keep them pretty much in place? They kind of like,
yeah, it keeps them in pretty good. I mean, if you're having like a lot of wind and your boat's swaying,
yeah,
it'll drag closer to the boat over and over. You want to avoid recasting your suckers, but I mean, sometimes it's inevitable.
But like, are you wanting them to have a little bit of leeway, like kind of swim a little bit, but not really?
Right. I want them kind of pegged in place, but they got.
Yeah. So that you just want that to be the leash.
Right. This just anchors them to the bottom, and sometimes this will be 10 feet away too.
Yeah.
It's not ideal, but it happens. So that's gonna happen when you get the boat sway. It's just gonna click.
That's some Josh shit, man.
Right, and then you just gotta keep an eye on it. Like this one's got a bunch of slack, kind of.
No, this is a lot like catfishing.
Right. It is. It's super.
There's nothing wrong with that. If anything, I'll be honest, dude, the cat fishermen that I've come to know, the stuff they do is so technical. I don't really care to bother with it because it's tedious. It takes a lot of. It's very scientific. It takes a lot of.
Scott Manning is a hard-working dude. Man.
Yeah,
Picture that guy? He's nonstop.
The guys that know what they're doing, like Scott or Mark. It's like it's more tedious than any trolling I've ever done. It's definitely more tedious than casting. Like I get you're not. There you go. Swing around for it. Smile for the camera.
You gotta whisper sweet nothings in their ear to calm them down.
Just let it happen. Just let it happen.
Open your mouth.
I like to get a nice chunk of meat. Just to, when you cast them, like, you know, that'll rip. I like it a little bit farther back than that, usually somewhere in there, but whatever. That'll work. This one's kind of a big one.
Godspeed.
Right.
So, talk about your hook, the way you got it set up on that treble.
This rig is kind of small for this particular
Looks
sucker.
like it's been bent out. Clearly, you probably did it on purpose.
Oh yeah, that one's just to strictly stick in the sucker like this. Now, when a fish grabs a sucker, usually it's T-bone or somewhere in the head, and the first thing they do is they swim away, and they try to get that, you know, get control of the head, down head first. So I get most of my fish on that circle hook.
Really?
Whereas most guys don't use circle hooks.
Well, yeah, I know most of the rigs I've seen. Floor is yours.
Bombs away. Boom.
It's like a pounder, but, you know, smellier.
No, in all seriousness, how much does that sucker weigh? Like, I'd look at that fish and be like, that looks like a 2-pound fish.
Right, something like that. And you don't want to sit there and, like,
No, I know, right?
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
You gotta
blast
be
it.
gentle, and
No, I like...
once I cast them, I avoid recasting them like the plague, because you're just gonna be killing suckers. You know what I mean? Set them once, and like you'll see other guys coming out here, and I'll tell them, like, don't. And they'll be casting, just constantly messing with
Drag
them.
them, yeah.
Just leave them. All right, so this is the ideal size for doing this particular tactic. What I have left in here, if I can catch one. Just because you can cast them, and my rigs are pretty much set up
Your
for.
thing is going bonkers, dude.
Oh, that's just the boat swaying.
Okay.
When I'm casting and dragging suckers, I like to run them probably double that size at least. I like to like that size we just cast it out.
So when you go mobile, you go bigger.
Right, because I'm not casting them.
Yeah.
And like, I'm just the type of guy that bigger bait, bigger fish.
Yeah.
But like, I'll use a giant sucker and catch a 36-inch muskie. You know what I mean? They don't care.
But for casting, that's kind of your ideal
Right.
size.
Yeah.
Because it's just too hard to lob a giant piece of meat without ripping holes in its
Yeah.
face. But yeah, these ones you can whip out there a mile. You don't want to be like giving it everything you got when you cast it either. Just a nice lob.
Yeah, it's probably the best word. I think that's almost universal for live bait fishing. It's like one of the things people make mistakes, like shad especially. The sucker's obviously a little bit more integrity of what you're hooking, but like the smaller live bait and stuff like that, like that's the biggest mistake people make, it seems, is like, you know, fling and then you watch it go off in the wild blue yonder. But
Right.
even with these, I say that because I'm that guy. I've done that.
I've casted off a bunch of these before.
When I bet, yeah, $10 a pop, you're really ginger with how you.
Right. Well, these ones are. Yeah. They only had 6 big ones that were $10. The rest of them were the 6 or whatever. I forget what it was, but you'll have small ones, and those ones you'll just kind of lob, and they just their face rips off, and then they go flying anyways. You're like, sweet. There goes $5. Little snack size.
It's the Halloween sucker snack.
No, this one I'm not even gonna double up on the lead. I'm just gonna put one.
So I know, just like, this is not something I'm super familiar with, but I've done it. But I've noticed that, like, I've used sucker rigs that, like this, where it seems like they pull the pressure from the front, and especially when you have the hook like that, it goes in and then it pulls. And I've used other ones before, just out of ignorance of just like, oh, here's the sucker rig. I'm like, okay, sure, but they don't pull all the pressure from the front of the nose, so it's not pulling the fish like this. So if there's tension, it pulls the fish like this.
Right, it comes in sideways.
Is there any use for that, or is or is that just a dumb sucker rig?
Right, yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I mean,
Just curious.
cheap junk. Not that mine's not, but you know, I make mine and they work nicely. I have a lot better hookup ratio than a lot of those rigs.
Yeah.
Like back in the day, 50%, you're doing good. These I'm doing better than that.
Like anytime anything like if the fish wasn't directly underneath the boat, it was getting dragged sideways.
Now, ideally, you want to set the hook right away.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to wait. So, most guys, when they're casting, they try to get right over that fish and wait till it starts moving away from them and then blast them. These, we're kind of stuck doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
So, it might be way out there jumping on the surface, but just blast it. You know what I mean?
Swing away.
Right. And do it hard. Like last year, I told my buddy, hey, I want you to try to break this rod. And he broke the rod, caught the fish. But
you should mention that happened. Yeah.
these won't break, they shouldn't. I'd be upset if they did, but these rods are like the best ones.
Yeah.
Half glass composite St. Croix ones.
Are they making sucker rods? Is like a sucker series rod, or is it just like
Sucker series.
a sturdy rod?
Generally, you want something like a trolling rod, something glass.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Tons of backbone, but you know, some give.
Not your typical graphite.
Right.
Almost, yeah.
Graphite loves to break on hook set.
Yeah, it's shocking.
Honestly, there is no bigger hook set in anything fishing I've ever seen in my life harder than a sucker hook set.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care if it's sharks, like you are giving it everything you have. Especially when they're out far, because like you gotta
pick up all that.
picking up all the slack and blasting giant hooks through.
So what's the pickup like on this? They grab it and just
It's all different.
swim off?
Sometimes they grab it and just zzz, and just beeline it. Sometimes they're just like, they grab it and swim 2 feet, and you're like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So yeah, we just gotta pay attention, keep these kind of tight. If there's a little bit of slack, like we find a good sweet spot where, you know what I mean? Like you want to avoid them constantly getting pulled closer and closer to the boat.
Well, that begs the question too. You said like some of the strikes are really subtle.
Right.
Like, is there a constant game of keeping up with it? Like, there fish that will hit it so, like, just kind of go like, and then you don't know unless you're like, wait.
Right.
So how do you?
A lot of times, like you got to be paying attention visually too. The line will be the wrong way from where you casted it.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So you got to be constantly keeping an eye on things like that. Like I was taking my 3-year-old out doing this, and I'd blast him and stand behind her while she reels in a muskie. You know what I mean?
And that's what's cool, because like I have experience with that. Trying to get kids into fishing is fun and it's tough enough, but then getting kids into muskie fishing can be particularly tough.
Right, and this isn't always lights out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a chance we could sit here for a couple hours and get 0 rips, but there's a chance we can catch 3, 4, 5 before noon.
But like you said, the cool thing is, even with trolling, it's like I'm a little bit occupied right now. You can't give full undivided attention. Even though you're paying attention, it's like you set up, you can bring a wife, girlfriend, kids out, and then patty cake or whatever, play Game Boy.
Right.
And then hey,
we got tablets out here.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, seriously.
Last year, me and the old lady brought the chessboard out, and we're just like,
oh, dude.
You know what I mean?
It's like a different level of sophistication. That's pretty.
Right. We're sitting back. I'm teaching her how to play chess, and then quick bang one, get back to it, finish your game.
Have a couple mimosas.
Right. Yeah, like this could be dangerous if you're drinking, because you just get so smashed. But literally, now it's a waiting game.
Yeah.
I keep this on a little bit. I'll turn it off in a little bit, but you can see them oh, there's one coming in the spread. You know what I mean?
So you had with the side scan on these hummingbirds, because this is new tech. I've got a side scan, but it's an older one. And frankly, I use it, but with something like this, especially where you're sitting stationary, you can actually watch the fish
with this particular unit, it's not like it's a live, like...
I know, it's not the
yeah,
panoptics,
right,
but like...
Right, you can see them on there, like, you know, oh, well, there's one, and
Yeah.
get ready. But they don't always bite. Sometimes you just come in.
Well, and you know, I was talking to somebody about that the other day, like this new, who makes that, Garmin? Like the panoptics?
Yeah.
Like, dude, that's like...
Next level.
ridiculously next level cool.
Right.
That's, in my mind, not as functional. Because it's kind of like, you know,
Depends
what
how
if you
you
turn
use
away
it.
from the screen? You know, because
Right.
it's like what if the fish like that's like you get a little bit of a time lapse shot, like, oh well, there's one, and then it'll get, but like I can
Right.
see the value of it. Like honestly, the panoptics thing, other than just like, you know, go and watch some live television on the lake, it's like it would be useful, but I'm just like, oh, you know,
I
driving
want
over a fish.
I want it for
What do
ice
you want
fishing.
the tape-fed readers?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the paper.
Yeah.
For ice fishing, I've seen that panoptics and like,
Oh, well, that would
oh,
make
there's
sense.
a pot of walleyes 100 yards over
Yeah.
there. You just go bang a hole and,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? You know when they're coming in. It's not like a Vexar where you just got a cone and it's a flasher, you know what I mean?
Can we go off on a tangent a second, just out of curiosity? Is valid? Brings up an interesting question I've always had. Why are flashers the standard of ice fishing and not stuff like this? Because I always assume sitting
A lot
stationary.
of guys use these now, they're starting to. And you have more of like, when you're using this, you got like a record of how your jigging cadence is, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
so you can see when they come smack your bait.
Yeah. Well, and that's
The
what-
flasher is real time, you know what I mean? Like, it's instantaneous. It's more instant than this. It's just like, you know, you can see exactly what's going on when the fish is coming up to smack it.
Yeah.
I love my flasher. A lot of guys use cameras. I don't want that stuff dangling down there.
Okay, so the flasher, you can see fish. Like, if you know how to read it, you can see the fish.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's because, like, I had always argued that, and I need to do it more, like, when I'm brake line trolling especially, I tell people that, you know, trolling brake lines, I used to use a flasher almost exclusively. And the coolest thing about the flasher was that's taking, well, obviously the side scan now takes a three-dimensional cone and gives you a three-dimensional image.
Right.
But the other graph is taking a three-dimensional cone and giving you a two-dimensional image from a three-dimensional space.
Right.
So the depth is like your cone could be one half of it in 8 feet and the other half in 12, and it's gonna medianize. You know,
Right. Sometimes you get like a false reading though.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but then the coolest thing about the flasher was it's so real time that, you know, what I would tell people is like, if you troll with a flasher and you want to stay on a brake line, there's nothing better because you just go for the wide spot. Because if you're up on the brake, it's going to be a thin line.
Right.
If you're at the bottom of the brake, it's going to be a thin line. If you're on the brake, it's going to be
fat
hitting, yeah. And I was like, there's nothing better for trolling a brake line than a flasher.
Right.
And people are just like, well, it's okay. I'm like, well,
This is nice for
explain
trolling
why.
because like I can see a giant patch of weeds coming from
yeah,
a mile
no,
away.
this is great for this, yeah.
And like you can see the top of the brake, the bottom, and any kind of bait or fish in between. It's nice. But I would have liked to be in a little bit shallower, but I think we can make this work. I like to be in like 18 feet and get some up tight to the weeds.
Yeah.
Because there's a weed line about halfway between us and shore, and then the break is right here. So we got some 20 some feet of,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know what I mean? We're covering the top of the flat, the right above where it drops down, and then the base, and maybe one or two on the drop itself. So there's just fish cruising through here, and we're just gonna.
Well,
Someone's gonna come.
what's
pick 'em
really interesting about this, and I feel like an idiot for having never done it, which is stupid. Can I do a little Buck Perry geek out a minute?
up. Sure.
There's like one paragraph in his original book there he says specifically that live bait placed on deep break lines in the fall or winter is an effective way to target muskie and pike. And he might mention, there's like a 3-page chapter in his book about live bait where he just kind of says, this is an option, but it's another speed control. So
Right.
like, this is what's cool. Like in my opinion, just like talking with people that were striper fishing, and even this too, it's like the way I always looked at it is like, I don't think the fish necessarily know what's real and what's not.
Right.
Because if they did, we'd always catch them on this, and they'd never eat the other stuff.
Right.
But this is like, again, the best way I can put it into terms I always thought was like, it's like battery operated bait. You know, it's like you have the control to put it there,
Right.
but then it's animated, it's doing something while it's not doing anything. Even when you're dragging it, it's hanging off the back, but especially with this, it's like you're putting it out there, and obviously dead bait has its applications too.
Right.
But like, this is something where you can keep something in one place at a very specific location, and it's not just something sitting on the bottom. Like if we just did this with a spinner bait, we'd be here for 3 weeks probably. You know.
Right.
You know, it's like I don't think there's I don't think it's anything special with like.
Right.
But it's like the bait actually does something. You know. So the live bait thing. This is where it comes in handy. But I always thought it was really interesting that this is literally. I'm 33. The first time I even knew anything about that guy was probably when I was 6.
Buck Perry?
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, and I remember reading that chapter when I was, for I guess read it was like 9 or 10 or whatever, but like, and it's just interesting that like that's something he specifically mentioned in his book. Guy that focused on bass might have mentioned Musky by name thrice in his materials, and that's one thing he said. He was like putting live bait on deep break line. So like at one point, it's cool to think that like he thought about that. You know, it's cool.
Right. Yeah. He's my
I
dad always.
don't mean to geek out. But
My dad always quotes him. Like
Oh, dude.
his quote of like the longest, narrowest, deepest
Deepest
break,
break.
is whatever you have found your fish.
Yeah.
My dad can say it the way it's supposed to be said. I can't.
Oh, I know. We've got the little secret handshakes and all that.
Right. Yeah, the dead bait, they'll eat. Like if I run out of live ones and I got some munched up dead ones, I'll chuck them right back.
Yeah,
on.
they're not. Yeah.
And
Leftovers.
everyone thinks like pike are the scavengers.
Oh.
Well, the later it gets in the fall, they will snatch that right off the bottom,
No,
dead or not.
Yeah. No, I've known muskies are scavengers. And I think the buck stops here, dude. These are great.
That one went straight in my box because I just love that.
Oh, well, dude, I can't blame you for that.
Yeah, usually they don't make 4-ouncers. It's not as practical. Like I wouldn't be casting that up in these weeds, but you know what I mean.
But dude, deep creep shit. Yeah. Or trolling. How fast did you? So you tried trolling it?
Not that one yet.
Not that one yet.
But I got buddies that I have given to. A lot of guides on Green Bay have been hooking up with
Really?
stuff.
Trolling them or casting?
Yeah, trolling them with the 4-ounce. These ones, if you're casting and like slow rolling it, it's bumping at 15 feet of water.
Oh my god.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's nice.
Like this is more of my, 2-ounce, ounce and a half are more my speed. But
Yeah.
you've caught more fish on them than I have. I just can't seem to get those bit. They just are on the bucktail bite. And when I was throwing the 10s earlier this year in like June, like the single 10 on the back, it seemed to like spook them away. Because then I put on some double 9 regular bucktail and third cast hammered immediately. You know what I mean? So it's like, is this too much for early on? Probably. But now this time of year, I think that this might be what's up.
Oh, you mean that size you tried?
Right.
Yeah.
Pay attention. Okay, like this one's off that corner, this one's off that corner, this one's straight out, that one, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And you noticed the line had gone.
Right.
Well,
It's not, it was going like that direction or straight ahead.
Yeah. But the suckers themselves aren't going to be able to move that very far, so it's not like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll have them like, if there's a fish in the area especially, we got a muskie right there.
That's a muskie?
Yep. See him? So he's on the deep side.
No doctor, I don't know how to read the chart. Show me.
Well, it's already gone, but that, whatever that was a fish. It's hard to, like, these, when you're anchored, it's not as good as when you're moving. It doesn't just...
Well, it's not designed, they're
Right.
more for... That's flat.
Weeds.
Yeah.
Just nothing but weeds. And then the weeds tighten up and get closer and closer to shore here. But like a super steep break line.
Yeah.
So they're either on the break or on the weed line.
Yeah.
And we're just in between. And this is like a good transition from if they're coming out of the deep, they're going to be cruising right through
Well,
here.
and this is... it's called musky hunting, but if you really look at it in terms of hunting, in most cases, this is more like hunting, where you're picking a spot and then you're setting up.
Right.
It's not like I'm running around chasing the deer through the woods.
Right. This is
This
a
is I'm
stakeout.
sitting-
This
yeah,
isn't a deer
yeah.
drive. This is a stakeout.
Yes,
Yeah, right.
it's not a deer drive, it's a stakeout. Yep.
Yeah, a lot of times you want to go to them, but sometimes you just let them come to you.
Well, and in all fairness too, like this is incredibly efficient. This is incredibly efficient.
And a lot of it is just how you have your spread. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you've literally, I mean, that's why I think Buck said it, because he was like, if you know where the fish are at, give them a speed control that's saying, that's the other thing I've always thought about, which, I mean, this is just speaking from via satellite down in the boondocks, but like every time that you hear people talk about the sucker bite, like they're not doing this in the summer, right? They're doing this in the fall or the winter. Well, fall because your winter's
It'll
hot
work in the summer. I've caught fish in the summer.
Yeah.
It's just hard to keep your suckers alive.
Yeah.
With that cold water.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing I always thought was like not obviously fish are lethargic and don't hit it, but especially in the fall too, it's like a sucker on a live bait harness is never going to be able to be as janky as one not on a harness.
Right.
But in the summertime and everything's wanting stuff fast, and generally they're going to respond. The sucker can't do the dart thing that's going to trigger a. But in the fall when they're a little bit slower, that's what always made sense to me. In the fall when everything's a little bit slower, it's like this is kind of more synced up because like they can move slower because all the cold-blooded animals are all at the same metabolic level because they're all in the same water.
Yeah, so they just cruise around and find that nice hot dog meat missile sitting right on the bottom. And
it's raining meat.
Meat missile. You should try the meat missile.
I like a weed edge close to a steep break, somewhere with like a flat kind of in between the two where you can put your stuff out and not get salad all over your suckers. Yeah. This is just like set it and forget it, and they do the work.
Set it and
forget it.
So you're looking at your charts, you're saying, okay, this looks like a nice area. If you didn't know this drop off was here, that's what you do basically. You're gonna look at
look at a topo map. Like I like to be close to a steep break line.
Yeah.
Whereas like if you set up over there, it's such a gradual incline.
There's nothing direct. They can fan out. But here it's like you've got a literal line. You're putting these all along.
If you're coming through here, you're coming through either at the base of this drop off where we got suckers, on the drop off where we got suckers, the top, or closer to the weed edge.
Yeah,
I mean, we are
covering all that right now.
Right. And it looked like I just did a big circle, and I pretty much did, but like.
Yeah. But you explained why you did a circle.
Right.
Because the circle is covering every possible break that you mentioned.
Right.
Well, yeah, but if you don't put it in the right spot,
right?
Like I can just see those guys, and it's not a criticism. You can't blame them. Everybody's new at something. Everybody's got to crawl, but like I can, especially with live bait. I know maybe it's not the case up here, but I notice a lot of times with other species, especially, like guys notice it with striper guys. And I'm no striper guy, but I've done it enough with other guys to know that they think most of the guys will go out and you'll be marginally successful at times, but they're like, oh, what? Let's go get shad. And we just throw the shad.
Right.
And then you go out with somebody like Todd Asher, did a video with us, and he's like, well, sometimes you drift the shad and you hook them like this, and you want them to go down like this. Sometimes you want to hook them through the belly so they'll swim down when you're fishing this kind of thing.
Right.
Or you'll use this kind of weight when you're doing a drift. And it's like, so the live bait is still subject to operator error, operator expertise. Like it's how you use it. It's not some magic
Right,
thing.
And there's so many different ways to run suckers.
Yeah.
Like when you're casting, you want to be bringing the fish to your, instead of waiting for it to come to you, you're bringing them.
Yeah.
You're bringing them to you because like a lot of times in the fall, they do a lot of lazy following and they don't want to commit, but they're gonna eat that.
Yeah, and that's staying constant.
Right.
That's staying right with the. That's one of the things. And I've had it happen too many times to think it's coincidence. But it's happened more than a few times where, and I'm stupid for not even a sucker, but like a lot of times I'll hang a bait off the side, like just a bait. Now I'm not a floating crankbait or but like a Bondi bait or a bulldog or something like that, and it's just something that stays there. And like you said, you're bringing fish into it. I don't think that's just the fall. Like I've had times in the summer. That's why I do really extended figure eights sometimes, or my figure eights like jigging the bait at the boat before I bring it in. Because I think one of the big misconceptions, I think, is that people think fish follow baits, but they're not following the bait. They're following the wake of the bait. And the cool thing about that is, route. Sometimes they follow the wake right behind the bait, where they've already tracked the scent. It's like if a dog is tracking a scent through the woods.
Sure.
Like he's not always on the coon's tail or whatever animal he's chasing, but eventually he'll get there. And sometimes they just pick it right up. Sometimes, especially bigger fish, I've noticed, they can sense these wakes you leave in the water column. Literally, scientifically proven, minutes after you've cast. So you could go down a shoreline like this, and you could have casted there. You're here 3 minutes later, and a fish will feel that wake. Like he'll swim past and be like, what the hell was that?
Right.
And he'll be like, oh, let's go check this out. And he'll follow that wake back to nothing because you're there. And you know, I've also got another weird theory that like I think sometimes they might even come, because I've had fish come from the back. I sometimes wonder if they follow the wake of your bait that you've done. It hits here, well the wake disappeared.
The boat wake?
Well, your bait wake's disappeared.
Right.
But what's going down on the water?
Trolling motor.
Trolling motor. So he's like, oh, hey, this is bigger. And I swear to God, I think that sometimes they will literally follow a wake of the bait. Your boat's gone, the wake of the bait's gone, but then they feel that trolling motor wake, and they're like, well, I got something to go with this. Let's pick it back up.
You'd be surprised how long that'll linger in the water.
No,
though, like,
yeah.
When you'll see it on side scan, other boats.
Yeah.
Like I'll see it. Like that boat went like a minute ago, and I'm seeing
the wake.
the underwater just disturbance of their prop, or the air bubbles they're putting in there. Everything. I'm seeing it on the graph.
And that's like their spider sense, so
Right.
to speak. Like that's the sense they have that we can't really comprehend because we don't have any way of like, we can equate them into terms of like, well, we're really dependent on sight, so we pay attention to what they see.
Right.
And we've got smell. I don't know if smell matters, muskies or whatever. Sound, we pay attention to sound because we can relate to sound. We can't relate to being able to feel things that pass through the air.
Right.
5 minutes after we walk through. Like we can't do that. We don't have that organ, but they've got a lateral line and they can do that.
Right.
And it's 4 feet long.
Right.
So it's like if they come within 4 feet of a wake, they can, like you said, it leaves that trail, and that is so much more acute than any other sense they have. That and I mean we went off on a tangent, but like that's the thing about that. It's he's talking about bringing them into the boat. I think that's the big thing about it is like having something back, even if it's not a sucker.
Right.
But just especially a sucker, but having something off the back at all times, because you never know how many fish have followed your casts,
Right.
100 yards down, and they might be, I used to have them follow my kayaks. There were times we would turn around when we were kayaking and we weren't even like fishing, we were going to the next spot. And there would be a few times we were going casual, we'd turn around and we'd see a fish following our kayak.
Really?
Like with the little thing. I mean, it wasn't like every day, but it probably happened 5 or 6 times. And it makes you think, it's like, but there were so many times I'd have fish. I'd have at least half a dozen times where we'd be fishing and you'd see a
Sometimes it's a pump and dump. You know what I mean?
They just pick it up and drag it a little bit.
Yeah. They just didn't like it. Something wasn't right. But sometimes they come back. Sometimes it's just a small fish. Sometimes it's a pike.
The Muskie wants to speak to the manager.
And sometimes
Something
it's just
on this sucker.
it's a muskie staring at the sucker where that thing is just like fuck, you know, and it's taking the line out.
Got the little Forrest Gump legs on him. Oh no.
All right.
This is you. I'll net it.
Fuck.
Oh god.
Yeah, but this is gonna be an issue here.
Okay. You want me to reel that in, or?
We'll see what happens. I think we're free.
That one went through the drive-through. Jeez.
Sometimes you don't even have to set the hook. Like I could literally
Really?
probably reel this in and you could just scoop it up in the net. Like if you want. Watch this. You're gonna see this fish. I'm not feeling him. He's not really feeling me.
You ain't feeling each other. This ain't working.
Oh! Hooked him for a second.
You felt him?
Yeah.
Pull the bait right out of his mouth.
Oh yeah, there you go. There's the.
But yeah. You'll kind of tore up. Way she goes, you'll have that.
That's a fish. That's not.
Right.
Yeah.
And you never know. You're supposed to blast them right away.
Yeah.
Should I have gave that fish more time? Probably, but whatever.
I'm not worried. I think we'll get another one.
Right. Let's swap him out. But yeah, the carnage. I've seen a mangled way worse than that. But You'll have that. He'll be back. I'm actually surprised. Like, you saw that rod load up for like...
Yeah, I know. That's exactly what my rod did, except that as soon as it hit full weight, because I felt full weight and then it went.
That's the first one I missed this year, actually.
Heading to gain, Murph.
You know what I mean? That's typical in this spot. Say what?
Yeet! I'm sorry.
I never understood that.
It's just a dumb internet thing, but I don't know.
Well, it's a young kid thing.
Well, it's a young kid thing, but that's why I think it's ironic when I do it. But maybe it's just stupid.
You should have did it for everyone we
I
casted.
did. You just didn't hear me.
Oh.
I was doing. Yeet! Can empty.
I want the one that fucking zings that shit, because that one went the wrong way. Like, why? Whatever.
Like, how did... Well, said he went through the drive-thru and just walked out. I'll have a,
But you see, I was like, we'll see.
Sucker with
we'll see what happens there, and then I'm like, oh shit, he's over there.
pull up to the second window.
Something weird happened with this, where we must have pushed in a bunch, because I only got...
We haven't moved. I mean, I've been watching our boat. We haven't moved, and we really haven't pivoted.
Well, if you look at most of them, they're all like 60, 50. This one's 18.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that one's like literally right there. So I might reposition him. In fact, I'm gonna do that right now.
But the wind hasn't changed. How'd we?
It's picked up a little bit.
What?
You'd be
it's picked
surprised
up, but we haven't changed
when
direction.
you got 30 some feet of anchor rope out.
There's some leeway.
We got a lot of sway. Like there's a ton. Like we'll be covered. You'll see us going to 20, and you'll see us going to 16.
We stayed around. Yeah. How? I guess.
This is the center of the circular spectrum, I guess.
Sucker free. Sucker free.
See that?
Yep.
That's you.
Oh, don't come on.
Just
Come
do
on,
it.
dude. Make it fucking happen.
Just do it.
You almost what happened last time.
Just ultimate tension before blast. You know what I mean? You want to get all that slack. You know.
There's always ultimate tension before blast, bro.
Right.
What are you waiting for?
When?
Whenever you feel comfortable, man. I think it's been on there for a good while because she swung around the boat.
What?
Plant the...
Oh, where'd it go?
She double backed. She's still on?
What the fuck was that?
So that is weird.
That line was there, but there was nothing on it.
How the hell? Because like you guys saw me whip it way up in there. And it double backed.
Move that maybe?
Is it on this one? Yeah, that's what's going on.
Nope, that's what I thought. Okay.
All right, hold on. Let me recast this. Now this sucker's probably gonna die. This gets expensive real quick. You know what I mean? When you have consistent action.
So we gotta do the Jaws thing where it's like,
Din, 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 din.
like clip me in, clip me in.
Din, 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 din.
Opa. Opa, clear the valve.
All right, so we'll edit that last one out.
Swimming.
Make it rain, motherfucker.
It's a start. There. There's one.
Got him.
Right in the corner of the beak, which is perfect. Right, here, hold that net.
Got it.
I do not have my good pliers. I left it in Brian's boat.
I just got your text about that too.
All right, so we got this.
It's a really clean hook set. I mean, that's like.
Let's move this net to like not where it can jump out.
What's he gonna do, bro?
So obviously we don't need to really bump this fish or anything, but some footage of you hoisting it out, and take some stills if you want. Here, just climb back here, Cory, and take that fish out.
Come here. I'm sorry.
And that's the average size, cookie cutter Pewaukee special.
STFF. All right.
Hey, so Mike kept just drove past, saw you holding that fish, and gave you the thumbs up. Just so you know.
How you feel about it?
So
I feel so much better.
here's what's gonna happen. This one's probably dead because he just blasted his fucking face off after. All right, but we'll see.
I don't know.
We're already running low on meat. I bought fucking 10.
I know.
We should have 3 fish already. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
We should.
It should be, yeah.